Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for that, Jodie. Yes, I'm Lisa Rudge. I'm from ADHD Foundation, and I'm really delighted to be talking to you today about empowering your child from diagnosis to daily life. If you didn't already know, you're joining us today during the month of October, which is ADHD Awareness Month. So it's a really good time to be getting this information out there. Okay, so thinking about from diagnosis through to daily life, well, that starts pre-diagnosis, doesn't it? So we all might have had that light bulb moment. Oh, well, something's happening, we don't know what that is. So it might be when a teacher describes a difficulty. It might be when we notice that our child needs assistance and we go to the teacher, or even go to the GP or health visitor, whoever it might be, to say, well, my child might need help in these areas. We might recognize it from something we've seen or heard, in a magazine or on a TV program, or our doctor might suggest. So there's lots of things that might prompt that initial, oh, I wonder whether that fits with my child. And for some of us, that can be really difficult. There's lots of misconceptions about ADHD. So lots of people might have those, I suppose, ideas of what it is, what it isn't. So just before we go further into it, just let's look at ADHD. It stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And if you've ever attended anything that I've run before, you'll know that I think that that's an absolute rubbish name for it. Because actually it's not an attention deficit, but it is an attention dysregulation. And it's not necessarily a disorder either. Yes, it's a condition, but those with ADHD are broken. It's not a deficit or a disorder. And I suppose when we're thinking about empowering our child, it's really important that we consider what we think about ADHD. What's our narrative around that? We get that diagnosis. Often we go through a big roller coaster of emotions. It might be relief. Oh, thank goodness, I've finally got that diagnosis now, so my child can access X, Y, and Z. It might be reassurance, thinking, I knew there was something, I couldn't put my finger on it. It might be fear, what's going to happen for the future. It might be overwhelm. Oh my goodness, got all this information and what's happening. There's a whole range of emotions that you're likely to have felt, even if they're only transitory. I've put a couple on screen here. I'm guessing you'll be able to throw loads more at me there. But it's important for us to think about our thoughts and emotions around ADHD. Because if we're going to frame it in a positive way to our children and young people and give them positive strategies to move forward, it's important that we own our own thoughts around it. So I wonder whether doing some self-reflective questions might be helpful. I know that sounds a little bit, oh, what does that actually mean? Self-reflective questions. But if we think, okay, is there something that's going on for our child that we're not fully accepting? So for some of us, we're like, oh, well, do you know what? They'll that's not right. And school is saying that, but I don't see that. Or, oh, it's just a phase, or it's just copied behavior from their peers, or no, they're not really having difficulty there. It's important for us to think about all of those things. Are we accepting all of the areas that our child might have challenges in, might need support with? Look at the biases that we might have with regard to ADHD. Like I said before, there's lots of misconceptions. There's lots of misinformation out there as well. And as a parent, you might be thinking, oh, well, I've got ADHD myself. My child doesn't look like I present, so they can't have ADHD. Or we might think, oh, well, so-and-so in their class has ADHD. They're not like that. They don't do that. It can't be ADHD. We might have bias to think, oh, well, ADHD is a bit of a, oh, I don't want people to know. So what biases do we have? Are we fully open to our own thoughts around it? If we're not open to our own thoughts around it, it's going to be really difficult for us to help our children own their ADHD and thrive with their ADHD. We might be secretly hoping that some of it will go away. Like I said, with those misconceptions about ADHD, lots of literature might say that it's all about children. It's all about little boys. But in actual fact, ADHD is a lifespan condition. You know, it takes us right through our whole lifespan. How it presents might change, but our ways of working, our neurotransmitters are still impacted. So if we're secretly hoping a trait or an aspect or a difficulty will eventually go away on its own, well, perhaps we need to think about that to say, okay, what strategies can we put in? Is it likely it's going to go away forevermore? Or do we teach our child strategies now, whilst whatever age your child is, whether that's 6, 8, 12, 15, teaching those strategies now will put them in good stead for everything that's going to come in the future. It's important to see your child through that strength-based lens. Now, with this, I'm not meaning to say that there aren't any challenges with ADHD, because there absolutely are. And I appreciate that living with ADHD is really tough. However, there's lots of strengths as well. So I'm not talking about that toxic positivity where we're going, yeah, everything's a superpower, because there will be some challenges. However, if we use that strength-based lens, even with the challenges, we're setting our child up for success. It's important that we emphasize strengths more than any sort of deficit or challenge, because that will impact on how our children see and judge themselves. So if we're always saying, oh, you can't do that, I don't know, that piece of work, you can't do that because you can't concentrate, or you can't sit still, so you can't go there. That narrative will embed to your child to think, oh, well, actually, I can't do that. Well, actually, let's empower them to have that autonomy, to have that self-awareness. So we perhaps should emphasize the strengths and the impact and the trying and the positive things there. So let's think about maybe developing our sound bites, the things that we often say to our children, to flip that narrative. Because the more we talk to our child or young person in a positive way, the better their self-confidence, the better their self-esteem, and the better their motivation to work towards any challenges, the better their resilience to bounce back after any challenges, and the better they are at managing their emotional dysregulation that might be the result of any challenges. So think about how we can acknowledge what's going tough, but also acknowledge the steps that our children and young people are making to counteract them. If we've got a diagnosis, it can be really challenging, can't it? To think, oh, how do I explain ADHD to my child? They might already know, they might have had some idea themselves that, oh, actually, I can't do what my friend does, or they find it easy, I find it difficult. Or actually, the flip side, I find that really easy, why aren't they getting it? So our child might already have some sort of idea or some sort of acknowledgement. Our child mightn't have any idea or acknowledgement, might know what ADHD is, mightn't have heard of the term neurodiversity. So lots of people on the line today, you'll all be at various points there. How do we explain to our child? So there's not a one size fits all. I'd love to be able to say, well, here's a little bit of a narrative that you can explain to your child. We're all different. We're all at different stages of our age, of our cognition, of our maturation. So it is going to differ. But what is important is if we're thinking about the conversation from our child's point of view. Okay, so age appropriate or cognitive age appropriate. What do they need to know about it? So they're the first things that we let them know. Okay, what do they want to know about it? So we can expand. What are their concerns going to be? So think before about what it said about our own thoughts and our own internal bias. How we explain that to our child will frame what they think about themselves. So let's look at how we can reframe. Think about those words I'd said before that make up ADHD: impulsivity, hyperactivity, and inattention. Those words themselves are quite deficit-based, aren't they? Let's flip the narrative. So we might be able to hyper-focus. That inattentiveness could be curiosity, and tell me this, and what's this, and what's over there. Lateral thinking. So lots of those with ADHD will have lots of strengths in that lateral thinking and to be able to explore in that way. Creativity, quick wit and humor, determination. All of these things are on the flip side of those perhaps negative type words. So when we're explaining to our child, rather than saying, well, you're hyperactive and you can't pay attention and you're impulsive, let's look at how else we can reframe that. Like I said, we're not trying to dismiss the challenges, because we've got to acknowledge that those challenges are there. But let's build those strengths in as well. Let's flip that narrative to have that more even distribution of, yes, there's challenges, but I've got all of this at my disposal to help with that. There's an American ADHD clinician by the name of Dr. Ned Hallowell. You may well have heard of him. He's written lots of books. He's got lots of podcasts. He's a really, really interesting person to look up. So if you've got 5 minutes and you're bored at any point, look him up, Dr. Ned Hallowell. He made a comment one time about ADHD brains. Again, thinking about the strengths rather than the deficits, and thinking about how we reframe that to our children without, diminishing the challenges. And he explained the ADHD brain like a Ferrari brain, but with bicycle brakes. Okay, so our brain is amazing. It's fabulous. It's fast. It's top of the range. It can do all sorts. But sometimes we have difficulty going, whoa, let's just pull the brakes on that. And I think this is a really nice way to explain, especially, those hyperactive and impulsive traits. Ferrari brain, but with bicycle brakes. We just need to strengthen those brakes a little bit, because the brain's fabulous. What you can do with it is fabulous. Again, I'm not talking about that toxic positivity, but our impulsive brains help us with that creativity, help us with that curiosity, help us with those ideas. We just need to be able to take stock of those ideas and creativity. So I think, phrasing similar to that sort of way can be really, really helpful. But some of our children, they might struggle with, the metaphorical type thinking and the concept of Ferrari brains or anything like that. But even putting it at its most basic level, think about all of those, I don't know, thousands and thousands of years ago when we lived in little villages, all in little settlements. Who do you think would have been our hunters? Be those Ferrari brains, wouldn't it? Who would be our explorers? Without those who would take a chance and be curious and be impulsive, we'd still be in those little settlements. Who do you think across, the whole of our evolution, who do you think would have been our inventors, our entrepreneurs, our athletes, those who excel in the physical way because they've got that drive and that energy and that need to move? Who would be our musicians, our creatives? So I'm not saying that every one of our explorers or entertainers or musicians are going to be neurodivergent. However, research does show that there's an extremely high proportion of ADHD brains in all of these places. So when we're reframing to our children and young people, we might use this type of scenario to let them know that actually the way our society has evolved is because we've had all of these fabulous traits to draw on. So when our children and young people know, actually, yes, it's ADHD, and yes, this is what ADHD is, we need to perhaps make sure we can encourage our children to advocate for themselves. So we need to build in those traits, those strategies of self-awareness to help them. So self-advocacy skills include that self-awareness. How am I doing in the moment? What's going on for me right now? How am I presenting in the moment? Personal boundaries comes into this. What will I allow and what will I not allow? Confidence, problem solving, decision making and goal setting. So these are all ways that our child can advocate for themselves, for what they need, whether that's in the classroom, whether that's in their social groups, with friendships, even with families. Giving our children and young people the ability, the power to be able to articulate things for themselves, advocate for what they need in a strength-based way. We can help our children develop these through lots of different ways. On screen there, role play. So we can make up scenarios. What would happen if X, Y, and Z? We might have lots of practice. We might put lots of situations into place where our child has to use these skills. So we might purposefully put lots of mini challenges or side quests, as my son calls them, side quests, so they can practice those self-advocacy skills in a safe environment. So they build up that confidence to be able to use them elsewhere. Role modeling. So although we've just said about role play, where we might do it with our child, role modeling is for us using those skills. So they can see us, maybe taking time to set our personal boundaries. Maybe that was us saying, oh, actually, I appreciate that I got a bit emotional there, or I'm getting ahead of myself there, or actually, I need a minute to be able to process this information. If our children, young people can see us using those skills, they're going to learn how to use those skills in the moment. They're also going to learn that actually this is a valuable strategy that isn't something to hide or something to be embarrassed of. This is the way I can, self-advocate. This is the way I can build my confidence. And this is a way that I can use my autonomy to be able to get through whatever challenge comes our way. Like I said, whether that's in school, whether that's with our friendships, whether that's later on in education. Talking about those skills is really important. We might have a bit of a narrative as we go through our day, explaining, that role model, what I've just done there is because, so building up that narrative. We might use other people as examples, whether that's other people in our family or the people in the queue in Sainsbury's, or I don't know, the characters on Coronation Street. How are they using their personal boundaries? How are they problem solving? How did they come to that decision? How are they setting that goal? So talking through what we're observing, talking through our ideas and our child's ideas. Think what I'd said before about focusing on strengths. So one of those strengths we might be encouraging our children is actually, let's talk about this. Let's problem solve out loud. Again, if you've come to anything that I've presented before, you've probably heard me say the term externalize what's not happening internally. And I almost see it as, that grabber in the fair that goes and gets the teddy bear out of the machine. How do we grab it out and put it elsewhere? So by talking about these challenges, talking about goal setting, that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking it out, we're putting it out there so we can see it properly, so we can examine it. So we may well, build into our child, talking about the challenge. We might then praise, you've done really good about thinking about that. Would you consider X, Y, and Z? So again, think about that strength-based approach that we've just been talking about. We're not saying, oh, no, that's not right. But what we are saying is, I can see the process you're going in, so we're acknowledging the attempt, we're acknowledging the effort that they're putting in. Scripting language helps to build self-confidence. Okay, what do I mean by that? If, think about what you say every day, all the time. We have stock phrases we use, don't we? And they're sort of in there in our automatic functioning, isn't it? Our automatic brain that we don't even have to think about. So let's script language that we can help our child use on their autopilot. Let's script things that, build self-confidence. So rather than like, I can't do this, we script language to say, I'm finding this challenging. What can I do about that? Who can I ask? What steps can I take? So if we're helping our children reframe the challenge by giving them the language to articulate that challenge to other people, well, then that confidence builds, doesn't it? If we give our children tasks that will boost their confidence. Okay, so chores is a really good opportunity here, because we can give them something that they need to problem solve. How am I going to do this? Okay, Lisa's asked me to do X, Y, and Z. What does that mean? How do I do it? What steps do I take? So by giving that chore, that task, it, like I said, age and ability appropriate, it gives our child that self-confidence because I've done that, I've finished that. There's that motivation, there's that rush of dopamine to say, nailed it, got it done. Boost confidence. And then we can layer on top of that to say, well done for doing that, or thank you for doing that, or you've done that really well. That's really tidy, or that's really good. So giving a task, think about all those different layers to it. We're encouraging the problem solving. We're given a task during this time, given a task that we know that they can achieve. So we're putting it way out of their ability. So they've got the task, they can problem solve using all the skills that they have to their hand. They can then feel good about achieving that. And then we can layer on the praise by saying, thank you, you've really helped me out there by doing, like by taking out the bin or by feeding the dog. We might say, you've done that really well, you've done that, you've thought about that better than I have even. All of these little things will build confidence. But there are scenarios that we know our children and young people will have difficulty in. So when we're given those tasks, like I said, things that we know they can do, for things that we know are coming up that they may find challenging, we might want to role play those different scenarios. Role playing can take in lots of different ways. It doesn't necessarily mean, with that theatrical, I'm going to pretend this and you're going to pretend that. But we might look at the situation. Think of what I'd said before about externalizing things so we can look at it. If we know something tough is coming up, we can talk about it. Okay, what will we do in that scenario? What could we do? What ideas do we have? So by preparing, we're scripting the language, we're scripting the actions that our child might take in the moment. It's almost like a practice, isn't it? Let's practice those scenarios to prepare for those tough situations. So, okay, you might feel that being in the canteen at lunchtime is a tough situation. So our child might have told us that today they were in the queue and they were overwhelmed and there was too much choice or whatever. Okay, how do we prepare for tomorrow? What's tomorrow going to look like? What can we do? What can you say? Where can we go? Who can we ask? So preparing for that tough situation. It's important that for our children and young people, once we have that diagnosis and we are helping our child understand, it's important that we work with school with it as well. On screen here, I've got a paragraph from the SEND Code of Practice. So just I'm going to read out what it says on screen here. Schools should enable parents to share their knowledge about their child and give them confidence that their views and contributions are being valued and will be acted upon. Sometimes these discussions can be challenging, but it's in the child's best interest for a positive dialogue between parents, teachers, and others to be maintained to work through points of difference and establish what action is to be taken. So like I said, that's from the SEND Code of Practice. So that's what our schools have to adhere to. So thinking about what I've been saying, about empowering our child, we need our child to be able to say in school, okay, I'm having a challenge in this area, and advocating for themselves. We also need to be able to go to school to say, I've noticed my child is having challenges in this area. How can you support in school? Or I'm noticing this. What support's in place at school? School will have that open dialogue to say, this is working in school. Perhaps you might want to try it in other situations, or actually this isn't working in school. Is there anything that you're aware of that works at home that we can adopt for school? So having that triangulated approach is really important to be able to advocate for our child, have our child self-advocate, and bring that loop back up to have that feedback from school as well. And it can be difficult working with schools. So it might be worth us having a think about how we can frame that. What can we do? Is there a particular member of staff within the school that can be your go-to person or your child's go-to person? So before, when I was saying perhaps about thinking about that problem solving, if we know that our child has a really good relationship with Lisa Rudge at the school, can they be their go-to? If we know that our form tutor is more involved and they're the person who knows our child best, can they be our main point of call, our first point? So think about who in the school is best placed for those discussions. If we are having meetings, make sure that they're pre-arranged, because we've all been in that situation where, you know, in the playground, we need to talk, but the teacher's being pulled in 12 different directions from different parents, and they're still trying to keep their eye on the child. And, you know, there's lots of people, so we can't have confidential conversations. If we make sure that the pre-arranged meetings, they're not quick chats that can just be lost in the ether. The meetings that we can bring, you know, our content to and have proper outcomes. We might want to document those meetings. We might want to write like short minutes. We might want to invite other people to those meetings. So it's important that we can make sure that it's not just that quick chat in the playground. We might want to put something more structured into place, you know, and have a home school agreement that both home and school agree on how often we update, how we update, what method of communication. For some of us, written communication works best. Put it in an email, send it over, because that's how our functioning, our working memory, our lifestyle dictates at best. For others, we need to be able to have that face-to-face interaction, to be able to articulate, to be able to pick up on the nuances. So think about what works for you. How will the school update you? In writing, by letter, by email, by text, by, you know, whatever method of communication, you know, that on, you know, lots of different schools have different names. I don't know what it's called in your particular school, but those learning platforms. So let's put something more structured in. How do we have that agreement? How does it work for my child? So that two-way communication is really, really important. So yes, of course, when there's challenges that we're aware of, we're going to let the school know about those challenges. You know, Lisa's finding it difficult in this lesson. Lisa's having a challenge with her homework. Lisa, you know, that's important at school now. But equally important is that they know when things are going well. Lisa has this way of working that really, really works for her. Lisa takes in information so much better if she's got a visual. So when things are going well, when we know, you know, there's those strengths, I was talking about before, those strengths and ways of working for our child, let's share them, not just the challenges. Let's share those successes that our children and young people have, so that reinforcement can come from the school as well, to say, I've heard that you did this the weekend, or I've heard that you've, you know, you're going to this place, or let's build on those successes. So we have the child's own self-achievement, a sense of achievement. We have that layered upon from us as parents and carers, acknowledging that achievement and really building on that. And then school, again, acknowledging that achievement and building on that. Let's think about what that's doing for self-esteem and self-confidence along the way. I appreciate that working with school or with other organisations, you know, whether it's our GPs, whether it's our social team, whether it's our peers, sometimes there is challenge. Working with school, we might be quite emotional ourselves. We might be cross, angry, frustrated, confused. However, it's important that we keep the communication between us and school, or whichever other body, respectful. That's important in lots of ways. If we keep our communication, our outward communication respectful, that's what we're going to get back. But that's also what our children and young people will learn, that respectful communication that will build on their self-esteem, build on their self-confidence, and build on their self-advocacy skills, because they will know how to communicate to get the best result. It's also important that we familiarise ourselves with school policies. Have a look on their website, have a look to see what their inclusion policy says, have a look to see what their diversity policy says, have a look to see what their disability policy says, have a look to see what their bullying policy says. You know, all of those different things. If we're familiar with school policies, well, then we've got information that we can use to advocate for our child, and we've got information that our child can use to advocate for themselves. When we're thinking about daily life, what strategies can our children and young people use in their daily life? Those strategies will take them through regardless of what environment they're in, whether they're at home, whether they're at school, whether they're at their clubs, whether that's work experience and then going into the workplace when they're older. Building in strategies now will carry them through. Good routine is really, really important in every single way. Routines help us to establish boundaries. When we've got good boundaries, we're better able to, you know, to feel empowered, to be able to get things done, to have that autonomy of self. So routines can help boundaries, help our working memory. If we know that our routine includes this information, we know what's coming, we know what to expect, we know what to prepare, we know what we need to deliver upon. Routine strengthens executive functioning. So it's that the more we do something, the more embedded it becomes. You know, you may have heard, you know, research has shown that if we do something 90 times, it becomes habit. So putting in those good routines to help us, you know, for example, of a morning when we're getting ready for school, that good routine will stop me as a parent saying to my child, oh, Lisa, you've got to put your shoes on. Lisa, you've got to get your school bag. If we have that routine that we know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, that means that me as Lisa will build that sense of autonomy, that sense of ownership for what I need to do. Yeah. So it helps our executive function. It helps prepare us for transitions. If we know what that routine is, we know what's happening in the future. So we know after lunch, we've got maths. We know after school, we've got choir practice. When we've got those routines in place, it prepares for those transitions, because what we often find is it's during those transitions that we see dysregulation. We often see emotional responses to, you know, overwhelm, or emotional responses to our executive functioning. We might have tears, we might have tantrums, we might have meltdowns, we might have outward behaviours. If we can prepare for those transitions by way of routine, we're less likely to encounter those emotional behaviour outbursts. When we're having those routines, when we're putting them into place, it's really important that we don't just say as parents and carers, here's your routine, you've got to stick to it. It's important that we co-produce that routine with our child, because if they have an input, if they have their say, they're more likely to be take more ownership of it. They're more likely to be more invested in it. So they're more likely to stick with it because it was their idea. Okay, so we might say, oh, mornings can be challenging. What can we do? What do you think would be helpful? We can steer them in the right way. But what do you think? What can we do? What can you put in place for better outcomes. Okay, think about what we're doing there. We might be steering them, but we're doing it from a strength-based point of view. What can we put in place? I want your ideas and your input. We're building that confidence. We're building that self-esteem. We're building that self-awareness, but we're also building that ownership. We're also building that investment, and we're also building those skills that then they can use those skills elsewhere. Routine can look like lots of different things. You know, we might bring routine into like the now and next. Now we're doing this. Next we're doing that. By using now and next, we're making the child aware of what's coming up. We're managing that transition, aren't we? We're not abruptly stopping something and abruptly starting something else without any warning. We're giving that warning, that time to transition. Now, when we transition from anything, there's a physical transition, where we go and what we're doing. There's the mental transition. I've got to stop thinking about doing that and start thinking about doing that. But there's also the emotional transition. Okay, how do I feel about that task? And how do I feel about that task? Having that now and next manages all of that. We can build that in. We might have step 1, step 2, step 3. So not only do we know what's happening now, what's happening next, what's happening after that as well. By having steps, we're managing our executive functioning as well. We're managing our work and memory. We're not expecting our child or young person to keep all of that information in their mind. We're externalizing. First, we're doing this. Next, we're doing that. And then it's that. Or whether there's steps to a task. We need to do this first. We need to put our underpants on first before we put our trousers on. We need to put our jumper on before we put our coat on. So building in those steps helps those clear routines, know what's expected of our child, so they can feel, you know, that accomplishment and that motivation to do the next step. Timetables, you know, we might have school timetables, we might have leisure timetables for what we're doing after school. And quite often our children find that unstructured time is where they might become dysregulated. So having lots of opportunity to think about our routine, externalize. So on there we've got mind map, externalize what's happening, how can we process that information in advance. Again, just as a reminder, because I haven't said it enough already, externalize what's not happening internally. So if we know our child, for example, has time blindness, we might put lots of structure in around time, whether that's timers, whether that's reminders on our clock, whether that's alarms. You know, think about what is challenging for our child. How do we externalize that? How do we build in the tools that they need? Okay. Visuals are great. Visuals are non-judgmental. Visuals help us with that routine. Visuals help us prepare for what's happening next and manage our expectations. And they're brilliant. So the more visuals we can put into place, the better supported our child is. But I appreciate that we don't always have visuals. So what do we do when we don't have those visuals to help with, you know, working memory or help with executive functioning and emotional regulation? Well, we can reduce our language. When we reduce our language, we speak plain. We don't put lots of words in for the sake of putting words in. Lisa, put your shoes on. Lisa, we're leaving for school. Rather than, oh, Lisa, come on, you know, you've been here 10 minutes already. I've asked you to put your shoes on 3 times already. Come on, put your shoes on, because otherwise we're going to be late and it's raining outside, so put those shoes on, not those shoes. Think about all that information. We reduce our language down, because for ADHD brains, it can take around about 10 seconds to hear an instruction, understand it, and then process it in a way which we know what to do with it. So think about that when we're given verbal instructions. give space, and repeat if needed. If we're going to repeat what we've said, try and use the same words, because otherwise, if we're putting other words in, it's almost like a second demand placed on them, and they might need that longer time to process again. We might ask our child to feed back to us. So what are we going to do? Okay, I'm going to put my shoes on, let me coat, and then we're going to leave. Offer choice. When we're talking to our children and young people, it's important that they have choice. They're always being told what to do, because actually the children, and that's what happens. When they have an element of choice, that self-esteem raises, that self-confidence raises, and they're practicing skills that they can use in other areas of their life. It's important perhaps not to give them too much choice, because otherwise that might be overwhelming. So 1 or 2 choices. Do you want this or this? Shall we do this or this? I'd say maybe not more than 3 choices, because otherwise that's overwhelm. Have you ever been in a restaurant and you can't decide what's on them because the menu is great and you're like, oh, I don't know what to pick? Think about that when we're offering choice to our children. Not infinite choice, but if we bring it down, give them the elements to regain some element of control. If they feel they've got some control, we're less likely to see dysregulated behaviour. And that's a tool then that they can use moving forward into other areas of their life, because they know how to make a choice. They've got the tools needed to be able to do that. They're given freedom to make the choices, and they feel better about themselves, even if they're small choices. Choice encourages problem solving. If we don't give our child choice, how will they learn how to solve a problem? If they can't solve the problem, we're likely to see dysregulated behaviour, and their self-esteem is going to go low. So let your child come up with their own solutions before we intervene. So like I'd said before, we might steer the conversation, but let them perhaps come up with their own solutions and explore what they're coming up with. Pros and cons, perhaps. So we might lead towards the best solution. We might say, okay, let's look at what you've come up with. You've said, that this idea and this idea and this idea, that one's a really good idea because helps steer that conversation. But we're still acknowledging it was their idea. We're still acknowledging the effort that they put in. We're still encouraging them to use those skills again in the future. Model frustration tolerance. Those with ADHD often have a really low frustration tolerance, and they end up dealing with big emotions. What happens with big emotions? Well, we're likely to have big emotional responses. So helping our children and young people see a different way of, exploring our frustrations or our emotions is really, really helpful. So talking about feelings and modeling emotional maturation helps our child, so we can help them co-regulate, so they can calm down with us, and we can model how frustration might look without the emotional outward behaviours. It's important, all emotions are valid. It's what we do with those emotions. So, perhaps thinking about frustration, how do we model frustration? If we model frustration by going, oh, get lost, well, that's how they're going to deal with frustration. So perhaps modeling good opportunities to deal with those big emotions can give them the tools that they need. So teaching and modeling, those big emotions, but teaching and modeling, other things as well, that delayed gratification. Our child wants it now because we've got that ADHD impulsive brain. Can't get it now, it's going to be later. Let's look at how we can put things into place. I appreciate that I am sort of running late on time. I'll try and keep this short because I do want to have time to take questions from you. But looking at how we delay that gratification. So we might not meet every demand immediately. We might say, well, okay, I'll be able to help you shortly. I'll be able to help you in a minute. Oh, beg your pardon, I'm so sorry. Let me get back to my screen. So sorry. So we might put things into place. We might set timers. Okay, when the timer goes off, then we're going to do that. Turn-taking games are really good at empowering our child. You know, we might have a chore money box. You know, I've got the thing on screen there that we might save for something specific, delaying that gratification. So think about the skills that we're building for our child there that they can use in other areas of their life, to be able to manage those impulsive traits, to be able to empower and advocate for themselves in the future. Using specific praise. So, you know, we've got to be careful when we're using praise that it doesn't come across as disingenuous. So behaving the effort over outcome. You know, I can see that was, you tried really hard, even if the outcome is that they've been dysregulated, or there's been emotional behavior, or there's something gone wrong in the way that they expected it to. Praising the effort, praising everything that's led up, praise for them even trying, you know, being in the room and trying to find a solution. Specific praise can help us, I suppose, think about modeling those behaviors. So we're not going just, oh, that's brilliant, that's brilliant, that's brilliant. We might be able to, I'm so sorry, everybody, my screen is coming up with other alerts. If I take that alert off before it goes itself, I'm going to remove the screen. I'm so sorry for the tech difficulties here. Okay. Yeah, it's gone.
Hi, Lisa. It's okay. We can't see them.
That's good. I'm so sorry. So thinking about specific praise, our children with your ADHD get, you know, criticism a lot. You know, research from Attitude magazine has showed that before the age of 12, somebody with ADHD gets 20,000 more negative comments than positive ones. That's big, isn't it? So in our everyday life, if we can make sure we put in lots of opportunity for praise to build up that self-esteem, build up that self-confidence, and build up that motivation. So we're empowering our child. So specific praise might be, it might be that praise for outcome. It might be, you know, you tried really hard at that maths exam, or you've sat still for a whole 10 minutes now, that's great. You know, all of that type of thing is helpful. But also that praise for being, not just praise for doing. You know, I'm really glad we've spent this time together this afternoon. Really glad that, you know, we've had that game of football. I love singing silly songs in a kitchen disco with you. It makes me laugh. All of those types of things empower our child, builds motivation, builds, you know, that self-worth. Allow for failure. We're all going to fail at some point. If we don't practice how to fail, well, then when we do fail in other areas, we won't be able to deal with the consequence. So allow a level of failure, but then use co-regulation to be able to deal with that. Use self-evaluation to be able to say, oh, well, okay, that didn't work as planned. What could we do better next time? So again, that strength-based approach to those setbacks. Use feedback, not criticism. That constructive feedback will, again, that strength-based will boost your child's self-confidence, self-worth, self-advocacy skills. Criticism will do the opposite. On our website, there's lots of booklets that give you some more, perhaps, hints and tips on how to work through what we've said today. You know, on screen there, you can see that we've got an ADHD for Children booklet there. That might be a good way to help our children and young people understand their own ADHD.